area, TFTA promises access to market and greater inclusivity for Africa's inter-regional trade prospects. This is according to the director of UN's Economic Commission for Africa in Southern Africa. In an interview with our reporter Liabo Setho, Adejunobi said even before the agreement between COMESA, EAC and SADC can formally be in place, there is a need to constantly assess its progress, risks and potential. He was speaking on the sidelines of the TFTA conference in Bulawayo, Zimbabwe.
Explain to us the TFTA, Tripartite Free Trade Agreement. What is it? What does it mean for an ordinary person sitting at home? What does it mean for businesses, big and small? And what does it mean for a country on its own?
Bigger market, free flow of goods and services, improved quality of goods and services, better opportunities for job creation, better opportunities for innovation and creativity. That's what it means. Because once goods and services move freely, trading will certainly be enhanced. Production will also be enhanced. Revenue will be enhanced. So if it's well implemented, negotiated and implemented, it's going to be a win-win situation, both for the governments and the citizens as well of the three regional economic communities, in this case, SADC, COMESA and the EAC.
It covers a very, very large area, about 17.3 million hectares or kilometers to be precise. Is this manageable? This is quite a large area.
I think the starting point is to look at the value. We're talking of a market of 632 million people. That's massive. That's huge. And without an expanded market, you cannot enhance production. You need a market to produce and to produce massively. And as you intensify production, you also enjoy economies of scale. And this makes prices of goods and services to be cheaper at the end of the day. So the benefits are there. It is also true that countries are at different levels and pace of development, and that's why the negotiation is taking place. Countries have to negotiate from their own standpoint in terms of what they think will be in their own interest and how they want this to go. But the good thing is this: we are not starting from ground zero. We're not starting from ground zero because we have the three regional economic communities, which also have some level of free trade areas. So what we're doing is to bring everybody together into a single zone, because quite a number of those countries have overlapping membership. Some are in COMESA, they are also in SADC. Some are in COMESA, they are in EAC. But with this integrated platform of the TFTA, we break down borders, we break down barriers, and we're able to trade more freely together.
The manageability or the complexity of moving things around within the member countries or the three regions, how are you going to manage this? As it is, SADC can hardly manage to move things across freely.
I often insist that we should not shy away from dreaming. We must dream, and we must dream big. If you do not dream, you cannot achieve the future. So we must not run away from dreaming. We must not run away from experimentation. If you do not plan, you plan to fail. So we must step back and be able to dream and dream big. So on that score, I do not have problems with it. In terms of whether it's doable or not, I think it is doable. I think it's doable. The problem we've had before now is that countries belong to, and you mentioned the case of SADC, because countries belong to different regional economic communities, multiple membership. You belong to 2, you belong to 3. So which one do you respond to on a particular issue? Which one? Because the rules are different. But now we are breaking down that barrier to say you belong to COMESA, you belong to SADC, it doesn't matter any longer. We are bringing everybody under the same roof, under the same umbrella, through the TFTA. And in addition to that is that we're not only talking about market integration. We are also talking about industrial development. We're also talking about infrastructure development. These are the other 2 pillars. So those other 2 pillars are to reinforce the market integration agenda. So if we're able to consummate all the 3 simultaneously, there will be a win-win situation. If it's only about market integration, there could be challenges. But if we bring these other 2 in a reinforcing way, then it will be possible for the objectives to be achieved.
So some have called for a common currency. This is a call that has long been around. Do you think it's possible with this kind of agreement? I know that a lot of other regions have actually failed in trying to come up with a common currency for themselves.
We're not at the page of a common currency yet. I think we need to move sequentially and the processes. I think if we can consummate a free trade area. We can constantly make a customs union, in which we have common tariffs. If we can do all that, probably after that we could begin to talk about a common currency. Common currency has certain criteria, convergence criteria, that have to be fulfilled, before you can introduce a common currency. In West Africa, for example, the ECOWAS has been talking about a common currency for over 20 years. It has not happened.
But why?
It has not happened because the convergence criteria required for that to happen has not happened. Just like you said, countries are at different levels of development. So if those basics are not met, you cannot introduce it. Let us also take ourselves back to the EU. There are challenges already. There's a lot of tension around the euro, and some countries say, no, we don't want to be, any longer within the eurozone and all that. The lesson from that to us in Africa is that we need to glean very well. We need to observe very well before we go into this stage.
Let's talk about political will. Do you feel that governments have the backing of these kind of plans? Do we have political will? Infrastructure constraints are quite real, and getting through borders, as I said earlier on, is quite cumbersome. And these kind of things, they really need that support from the top.
For the fact that the leaders themselves initiated this initiative suggests to me that there's some level of political will on their own part. When we get to the practicalities of implementation, that could be a different ballgame. And I do not think that it will be only the responsibility of the leaders. It will be the responsibility of civil society. It will be the responsibility of the private sector. It will also be the responsibility of the ordinary citizens. We must demand what we want from our governments. I think it's important. We must demand what we want through our local constituencies to say this is what we want to see. This is the Africa we want to see. Our leaders are not going to do something outside of what we want. Sometimes what our leaders do express our own fears as well. So we ourselves need to reconstitute this and make those demands in terms of agenda of what we want to do. Let me also tell you the positive side, or the positive storyline. The good news is that we're talking about borders and all that, but some countries by themselves are already taking the initiative to have visa on arrival for Africans. For me, that is fantastic. We've seen quite a number of countries doing this. Mauritius, Seychelles, Ghana, Nigeria, there are quite a number of countries. So countries are coming to the table. I will encourage South Africa to do the same. I will encourage, Zimbabwe, I will encourage all countries to do the same. Why is it that it's easier for non-Africans to enter our countries, and it's almost impossible for Africans to move around? I do not think even within the context of the TFTA, it should only be businessmen who should be able to move around. Ordinary African citizens should be able to move. There are issues around security that we deal with it separately. It's a separate issue, apart from moving. We have no earthly justification that our own citizens cannot move while people who are outside, our continent can come into our country. They are regarded as tourists, and we label our own citizens separately. I think it's really not good enough, and I think this is a kind of mindset that we need to change.
Economic growth is another important issue. A case in point is that Africa's second biggest economy, South Africa, hardly is growing at around 1%. It's not even growing at that. And you have member countries that have their own economic challenges. How do you balance the ambitious plans and targets that we have while also keeping in mind the issue of economic growth?
I think part of the regional integration agenda is to unlock our growth potentials. I think that's the other way around, If we create this space, because apart from our traditional goods that we send to Europe and America, the markets are not there for us, for our finished products, because those guys have moved far ahead of us. But we do have this market, huge market, over 1 billion people on the continent that we can explore. So that's what we're trying to explore now. So if we can explore that, and we've seen that in the experience of South Africa, in terms of how South Africa has been able to export in its big companies outside South Africa, the MTN, DSTV, and all that. They're outside South Africa, to the supermarket chains, Pick and Pay, and ShopRite and all that. I think that's a good thing. We've also seen the experience of the Dangote cement moving to almost about 16 countries on the continent. That is what we would like to see. Multinational character. Our own companies assuming multinational character and being situated on our continent. The good thing is this: if we're able to develop those kind of companies that are multinational in nature, that are able to transverse our countries, they are going to be here. Even if they move outside the continent, they will still plow back resources back into the continent. That is the advantage of Western companies. Despite they have tentacles all over the whole world, their headquarters is always at home. So we are For other countries, they are simply host countries. Home country is where the resources are located.